range. But this isn't even about the range. It's about you trying to control everything.
My name is Joanna Drake Earl, and I'm the president of New Media at Current. Current's quite different from most traditional media companies, certainly more so than any I've ever come across. Really because we've opened up all of our platforms and indeed our entire business operations to invite our audience to come in and help us create the content that they want to consume. Whether it's because they have a video camera and a story to tell and they want to shoot something and edit it and upload it to our site and then get it on television, or whether they simply want to share perspectives about their lives in text formats or photos, and we invite them to shape the content on all of our media platforms and direct what we're focused on in our world.
Tonight, she said, but I can't work in fast food all my life.
Good. How are you? I'm looking for Joanna Drake Earl.
Yes, Jonathan?
Yes.
Right? Okay, hold on just a moment. I'm going to get ready.
Hi,
Joanna?
Jonathan. Joanna
Hi.
Drake Earl.
Nice to meet you.
So glad to have you here. Welcome.
Thanks for the opportunity.
We are very excited to show you around Current today.
Great. Likewise.
And I know you've got a little bit of background, but I thought I'd start from the very beginning,
That'd be great.
but real fast. And
Okay.
then we thought we'd dive into the bowels of the operation
Good.
by giving you a little tour around
Great.
the company. Right now we're carried in 52 million households, both in the States, and we launched our first international channel in March of this year in the UK and Ireland. And then what we will also show you is that we're creating essentially a new convergence experience between the web and TV, something you've heard a lot about, no doubt, in
This internet thing.
2
Yeah,
decades.
I've kind of heard about it.
But we think we've got a really interesting angle that we want to show you.
Okay.
And that, of course, is available to anyone on the web.
We started broadcasting a little over 2 years ago. Our needs for storage were on the order of 20 to 30 terabytes. We are now ranging at over half a petabyte and growing. My biggest fear is not in the growth of storage at this point, it is in the growth of power and physical space. Our hosting world is all Unix-based and you know, Sun servers, Dell servers.
We're hoping for that. That's
Maybe
okay.
one of these days. Actually, in Current, Sun doesn't play a part at all. I believe we have one Sun server. Not for any particular reason, necessarily. Sun's technology hasn't been at a place where we needed it, when we needed it. A perfect example was when we went to look for network storage. We brought Sun in to look at Thumper, and we were too early for Thumper. Thumper was still in development at the time. We liked the technology, we liked the architecture. We were just too early for Sun's needs. Another issue that we have is with a lot of our vendors, because we look at a technology, we like getting into it very small, make sure that it's the right thing, and then we'll continue to expand it because I don't like a lot of vendors. So personally, I try to keep my vendor count as low as possible, but you gotta be willing to come in and play with us at the very beginning. And for the most part, we do grow all of our vendors to fairly large vendors over time.
We decided we wanted to take some of our best talent from our programming team and our web team and our marketing and seclude them in the basement. They debuted on Monday, the new current.com site, which we'll give you a peek at.
So what's the infrastructure look like?
Very Java-based, actually.
And which distro did you pick?
Which distribution?
Yeah.
Of
Which OS? Which OS are you running on?
we're running on Ubuntu. Tomcat servers all running on Ubuntu.
My name is Dan Levine. I'm the Director of Online Engineering here at Current. Sun hasn't really been at the edge of the development community in terms of what's hot, what's going on in an innovative way. So I think there is a perception issue around Sun and Sun Technologies in the developer world. But when you actually examine the products and examine what Sun's doing, it's all very positive.
We were downstairs and just, you obviously know what we do for a living. you don't run our OS, you don't run our tools, you don't use our developer environment. You pick the right language, that's good. So in terms of implementation platform, I think we've got a toehold there. And so obviously a lot of our adaptation as a company is to go back to those that we lost because we had a bit of a downturn in our business, and we're obviously doing our part to try to get that back up, and try to reach out to folks and say, so what led you to pick Ubuntu? What led you to pick Eclipse? What led you to pick the technologies and frameworks? So that were there key individuals that just had that technology view? Were those preconceived when you walked in, when you joined Current, or how were those decisions made? Because Joel unlikely made them. You probably didn't have a strong role in that. Al Gore probably wasn't involved.
Probably me and people sitting around me made those decisions. I think there's definitely a sense of Sun products as more of a large-scale enterprise solution as opposed to the startup solution. So when we're a smaller dev team, we're working with Eclipse. Not that it necessarily costs more. A lot of Sun is going towards open source and things like that.
No, it's all open source, but we clearly haven't gotten that message all the way out.
Absolutely.
So you're
but I mean, like 10 years ago, it was Solaris versus Unix, as opposed to now. And so I think that's just kind of ingrained in my history.
So from a brand perspective, from our brand perspective, your perception was big, heavyweight. I'm putting words in your mouth, but you can help me here.
Those are
expensive, inaccessible, probably overkill.
The same kind of concepts in the industry that drag around with Java itself.
Right.
Slightly big, slightly overweight, slightly more than necessary for a small, scrappy mode.
So I wanted to go check in with Anil and give him insight on what I just heard, as well as just get a status update from him on how we're doing, and especially in some of the big ticket things we're trying to work, as well as some of the just basic execution. How are we doing with Campus Evangelists? How are we doing with reinventing the brand? And what more can I do to help? Hey, Anil, you got a minute?
What's up?
So I wanted to tell you about a customer I went off and visited. And they were a pretty cool customer. They're called Current TV.
Yeah?
And they're, I think they're kind of familiar to the way we run our business. They're a traditional broadcaster, but they accept, I think the number is about a third, I don't remember exactly, but a third of their content comes from their viewers.
Do they have any Sun?
They don't have a lot of Sun, and that's one of the things I wanted to come talk to you about. And I just kind of asked some basic questions. What do you think of the company? Well, geez, you guys build big computers, and my dad did business with you, and so a familiar refrain.
Yeah.
And I just left there feeling, glass half full. They really wanted to talk to us. They're hitting all kinds of power, productivity, efficiency, functionality problems. Glass half empty. They weren't doing any business with us right now and didn't actually think that they could be doing business with us.
Well, there's a lot of stuff in here that we've got to fix, right? Because I think while business was so good, we sort of lost sight of the future. And so I think one of the things that you've been driving is, open source everything, make everything free, and the big play right now is how do we get back on campuses in a big way? So I think good news, people like Jeet Kaul and Joe Hartley and others are doing some good stuff with expanding the Campus Ambassador program. These Campus Ambassadors are in fact out there, the ones we have are active. We just sat through a review of how are we doing at events on college campuses, and I think those look like they're sort of spurring into action.
Yeah, there was definitely a generational shift as you went from the executives who were running the organization down to the developers who were a much younger generation. A lot of them just out of college or just out of a startup, and so those are the folks that we have, on the one hand, a hard time getting to because they presumably in college built a bunch of affinity. And it wasn't to us, and that's part of what we're trying to do back on those campuses.
Well, I think one of the big things is we have to offer them something that's really interesting beyond what they have today. So you can't just show up and say, hey, we're Sun, pay attention to us.
Mine's cheaper.
Right, and I think one of the things that we've got is Open Solaris is a big secret weapon, right? Now, why is this a secret weapon? Because Open Solaris has the great engine. If this was a car, right? It's got the great engine of that we want, of Solaris, but it's got the drivability of Linux. So when you talk about a lost generation, that generation grew up learning how to drive Linux,
Right.
boot
That's
up
exactly it.
experience.
Yeah.
This is the crossover artist. It's so important for us that this be successful. So we're kind of planning up.
And in that generation that isn't going
In
to be
that generation.
and they're not going to be paying
Right.
for software.
I think on the campus, we've just got to get people to do a taste test. That's what
Yeah.
it is, a taste test of Open Solaris, and see where that takes us.
You know, another thing, and I think this is all fueling the same shift we're trying to drive. Their perception was we were hard to do business with, and I probed a little bit. Are we really hard to do business with? And you know, I think 80% of it is that's our rap. 20% of it is we're actually harder to do business with than a CDW or a Dell or a somebody of that nature.
We are hard to do business with. I mean,
What are we doing about it?
We're doing a lot of stuff. So first of all, it's all in the details, right? So Startup Essentials. We have a good program for Startup Essentials. Turns out it requires you to have a company name to start with or a URL. Well, what if you don't? Turns out that we just expanded the program into India. We discovered that the terms and the contract requires you to be based in the US. So now how in the world are you going to be a startup in India or Israel or Germany with contract terms? So you know what? As silly as these sound and as bad as I feel about these, we're just one by one starting to knock down these little roadblocks. We're changing those things, we're localizing, we're understanding that those things get in the way.
Right.
So we are about to expand Startup Essentials into nearly every country we can. Really make it easy for a tech day to be followed by startup day, followed by people who can just easily and quickly buy it. The other thing that we're doing to be relevant to startups in particular and new customers is hosted offerings. So a lot of these people that are starting new companies today don't want to buy any gear,
Right.
and they don't actually want to host it or even run it, right? So our Startup Essentials program now has a partnership with various hosting providers in which you sign up and you get a better deal from that hosting provider on your hosted offering.
Right.
So, and this is actually one of the fastest growing programs we have. So no need to buy stuff from us, hosted with us.
We've simultaneously got to be focused with acquiring new customers, building out that base of people who may turn into,
Right.
the next Google or the next Citigroup or the next, Bank of China for that matter.
So I just did a review with all the marketing directors from both EMEA and APAC and the US. The number of new customers in the first quarter was 520 something, right? Now, good news is 521. Bad news, they all bought on the average about $17,000 worth of stuff from us. But you know what?
I'm fine with that.
Guess what?
Thrilled to hear
it's
it.
the first.
Right.
So what we've got to do is keep growing developers, keep doubling, tripling the number of brand new customers, because every one of
Quintupling,
these,
maybe.
quintupling, because you don't know how that's going to turn out.
Right.
And the wider the funnel you have, both on the developer side and the new customer side, one of those is going to turn into the next eBay or the next Google or the next somebody, right?
I felt after visiting Current like I feel after visiting a lot of customers, which is there's just potential everywhere. And overwhelmingly, they want to talk to us. They really want help, and they want folks who are investing in R&D, investing in innovation to come help them. They're not just looking for a lower price tag. This is not a price discussion for them. It's a value discussion, and it's an innovation discussion. So, we're all focused not just on what do we invent to build out our business, but how do we, invent and reinvent our own business? How do we change the brand of the company? How do we change the way we're perceived? As well as how do we deliver our value to customers as quickly as we can, both in university settings as well as in commercial settings?